nobody actually can replace you.
Thank you for being strict and goofy at the same time.
Thanks for being friends with my grandpa. Thanks for just being our physical education teacher.
Thanks for being so nice to me.
Thanks for being goofy.
Thanks for your kindness.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown's the best PE teacher. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I love your classes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being one of the best PE teachers ever.
You're funny. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr.
Thanks for giving me exercise.
Thanks for giving me energy.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for everything you've done to this class. Thank you, Mr. Gray, for helping my sister.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being nice to us.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for keeping us in shape. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for everything. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being funny.
For letting us play capture the flag.
Thank you!
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mike, for the 66 times you've taken down and putting up the football goalposts. And thank you, Gary, for the thousands of minutes that you've sat and worked a shot clock. We appreciate you.
For holding my jacket.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Gray, for being a very kind person. Thank you both for being cool.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being our PE teacher. And
Gray for making sure that there was never any leftovers left over, and thank you, Mr. Brown, for keeping this job fun.
Sometimes he scares me.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being there for my whole childhood.
Thank you, Mr. Gray, for helping me out in weights class.
Thank you, Mr. Gray, for teaching me how to play football. Thank you, Gray, you're a boss.
We know you like us more than our dads.
Thanks, Mr. Gray, for teaching me horizontal and vertical. Thanks, Mr. Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Gray. So we can get big now, thanks to you.
For teaching me football, Gray.
Gray, I feel like we've become really great friends, so thanks for all the great conversations.
Gray, I think you're a savage. Thanks for the 5 years of football.
Gray, you're the best shop teacher, and I love managing for you.
I had fun managing for you. Thanks, Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Gray and Mr. Brown.
Hey, Mr. Gray and Mr. Brown, thank you guys for all your years of service for Waterville students and the community.
Mr. Gray, you're like a grandfather to me.
Hey, Mike and Gary, thank you for all your hard work around the school throughout the years and helping me out.
Thank you, Mr. Gray and Mr. Brown, for everything you've done for Waterville students, staff, and community.
Thank you for showing us different activities. You helped us have fun. You helped us exercise.
Does exercise too.
Thank you for teaching us how to play the games. Thank you for showing us what to do.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm going to miss playing cards with you.
Thanks, Mr. Brown. I'm gonna miss your jokes, and you're my second favorite teacher.
I'm gonna miss you calling me Freckles.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Mr. Gray and Mr. Brown. We will miss you, and thanks for being such positive role models.
Miss the stories.
We will always miss your science teaching.
We will miss you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.